Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good, from science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we talk about the adventure of life and all things good. I'm Rafe, and today's show is going to be, as Zach says, this is going to be an awesome show today, a wonderful show, a terrific show today. We're going to be talking about some summertime things because it is summertime, and I can't do that alone, as the immortal co-host of mine says. So I've brought a special co-host again this week. Our friend Harry is here. Harry, how are you?
Hey, Rafe, I'm doing fantastic. Happy to be here. It's always a good day in the Bufnagle studios. Looking forward to the discussion today. It's always interesting to me, and it's always a fun time when we talk about it.
Yeah, so this is a thing that, and I'm sure you're like, where is this going? I'm so excited. Hey, first things first, thanks to our listeners. We're so glad you are here. We wouldn't be anything without you guys listening, so thank you very much. Remember to tell your friends about the podcast, and you will get a free episode, and they will get all the Bufnagle goodness that you get on a regular basis. Share it with them, share the love, share the buff, all right? So we are everywhere, as you can imagine. You can send us a note at bufnagle.com. We are on Twitter and Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Yeah, we're all sorts of places out there. Hey, if you are new to our podcast, give us 4 episodes or so, and we'll give you a reason to come back for sure. We're talking about all sorts of things, so something will surely resonate with you. Remember to tell your friends to listen, share the buff, share the love. All right, so remember, and lastly, subscribe, send us a 5-star review, and we get pudding and all sorts of good things, brownies and stuff like that. Harry, it is summertime. Summertime leads to one of the great American traditions right in the middle of summer, and it's not the All-Star break. It is a big day in America.
That's right. We're celebrating the 4th of July on July 4th. Recognition of what our forefathers did on this historic date over 200 years ago. In celebration of that, I think the best thing to do is go out, grill a couple of hamburgers, drink a couple of beers with your friends, wear a whole bunch of red, white, and blue, and watch the kids run around the backyard.
With sparklers and other
That's right, dangerous... just as James Madison intended.
Yes, so sparklers and lawn darts, preferably.
That's right.
The red, white, and blue lawn darts would be great. We had, you never had lawn darts, and my generation actually had lawn darts. And I knew people that would play lawn darts over the house. So you'd put the target ring like in the backyard, and then you'd stand in the front yard and throw the lawn. You've seen lawn darts, right?
Yeah, that just sounds terrifying.
Yeah, but and we had one kid would be in the back of the house shouting. We didn't have cell phones and stuff, so they would you say, "Okay, I'm going to throw now," and you'd throw it over the house, and you'd have to walk and make sure it wasn't going to impale you, and then you have to announce whether or not it had hit the target. I mean, it was terrifying. It was terrifying, but some great American fun. But okay, all of that great American fun with the cookouts and all that stuff comes through us through Independence Day. When we talk about 4th of July, it's really Independence Day. Everybody has 4th of July. We have Independence Day. And it recognizes the signing of the Declaration of Independence that is dated July 4th. Now, this is where it gets, the great thing about the internet now is every little word I say, somebody can nitpick and say, well, some of it signed it on the 3rd, and they really met on the 2nd. And it was it didn't go out till after. It was okay, look,
that's right. If your facts aren't perfect, then you're wrong.
Within every fact, right? See, if you have 100 facts and one of them is not perfect, then we need to throw everything out. But the document itself is dated on the 4th of July, 1776, and that's a big date. If you're an American, you don't know that date, then you got to turn in your red, white, and blue card. The American continent, the North American continent, had been colonized by European nations, had produced colonies in North America since the early 1600s. So if you rewind this thing, 1492, so right about 1500 was the start of the Age of Discovery, and then for about 100 years there, from 1500 to 1600, people were like, "Holy cow, this is all new stuff to us. We had no idea this was here," and we've talked about that in the previous episodes about Magellan and the world not being flat and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. But 1607 is kind of the starting point for formal European civilization in the North American continent. 1607, Jamestown. 1620 was the Pilgrims at Plymouth Rock.
Sure. So you've got Age of Discovery, age of really, really big ships going through narrow pathways in the Philippines, leading to some people's inevitable deaths. And then you've also got on the North American continent, Jamestown and the Mayflower and all those things. So walk us through, how do we get from there to 1776?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. To me, it's always interesting that the colonization of the Americas really starts in South America with that bump that almost goes out to Africa, right? And if once you look at the map, you realize that's where it started. But for those of us who grew up in the U.S., you kind of feel like we should have been first. I mean, that's how you feel, right? You feel that you should be to the center. But really, things started down in South America, and slowly the English took over a bunch of the colonies that were in North America. The Dutch had New Amsterdam, which was at the mouth of the Hudson, and so you had by mid 1700s there are 13 major British colonies in what would become the United States. And there's a lot of little nuances here, but pretty much you got 13 of them. And for those of you who are out doing the colony bingo at home, they're pretty much considered three different groups: New England, the New England colonies, the middle colonies, and the southern colonies. So New England, you got New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. All right, and the middle you got New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And in the south you got Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And that gives you 4 + 4 + 5, gives you 13 colonies. And that's how things sat from a British point of view. They had all of those colonies. They also had Quebec. They had Canada. The Spanish were down in Florida. I mean, the Brits were in Florida, and they gave that to the Spaniards. And then the French were running around in areas farther west. I mean, it gets very complicated trying to figure out where all that is. But basically, you got 13 British colonies along the eastern seaboard, and that was the setup in 1750. And then things kind of got tough for the Brits. Okay, so they're trying to run an empire around the world. Money is tight, and the American colonies provide a source of revenue, but they also require some maintenance, and that becomes expensive. So they start doing things like, we're not going to go into all of these because each of these could be its own episode, all right?
That's right.
You got the Sugar Act, the Currency Act, the Stamp Act of 1765, the Townshend Acts, which were tariffs in 1767, which led to the Boston Massacre in 1770, that's an episode, right? The Tea Act, 1773, which led to the Boston Tea Party, and the Intolerable Acts, which were retribution for the Boston Tea Party in 1774, and then the quartering of troops. All right, so these things start building on top of each other. Both sides are making, I guess you could say that they were kind of strategic errors. If you're trying to get along, you don't get in a big crowd and taunt the people with the weapons. Okay, that's probably not a good thing to do. But by 1774, in September, in Philadelphia, the First Continental Congress meets. 1774, September. All right. In April of 1775, we got Lexington and Concord, which are the shots heard around the world. The British had heard that the Patriots had stashed a bunch of munitions out there west of Boston, so the British were going to march out there and take the weapons. And then the Patriots said, no, you won't. And that's, that's where, you wonder, you
wonder where the Second Amendment comes from.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. We are not going to go into that discussion here necessarily, but that's where, right. That's where it starts. All right. That's where it is. All right. And by the Second Continental Congress, the idea was to coordinate defense against Great Britain. And by July of 1776, these colonies have decided that, you know what, this ain't working. We are going to file a writ of divorce. We're breaking up with you. We are breaking up with you, was the general principle. And it is interesting to read this document, and we're going to read parts of this, not the whole thing, because the list of grievances is rather long. But Harry, I'd like to go through, and we should read this thing. I don't know, it's let's see, depending on the typeface that you have. Why is mine? Oh, here it is. It's 4 pages. Did you know you can print on the back side of the page? Yeah, when I hit print on backside, I always think that it's going to be on the backside of the monitor as well.
Yeah, you're gonna have to turn your whole monitor around.
I need the one that spins and it rotates back and forth so I can print on both sides. There's a joke there, I'm sure, somewhere. Let's go through some of this, Harry. Do you want to do that first paragraph? Or these are classic words in the West, and
yeah. I think they are the foundation upon which the both the Articles of Confederation, right? Because a lot of people forget about that.
Yep.
And the Constitution were written. So we'll go through that.
All right. So, Harry, start us off.
Absolutely. So, the Declaration of Independence reads, in Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
Yeah, that's a big sentence, and if we were in Catholic school, we'd have to try to figure out how to diagram that. You know, do you guys ever diagram sentences?
I diagrammed sentences one time in like 5th grade.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a big one, but it's all right. So,
let's go through it clause by clause, right?
Right. So the first of all, unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. So it's interesting if you can't see this on the air in your ears. All right. But United is lowercase and States is uppercase. All right. So they are United States. At this point, these colonies were not considering themselves a single nation. They considered themselves free and independent states that were all kind of just banding together for purposes of, I guess ease at the checkout line is one way to think about it. We'll just pool this stuff together. We'll have our joint,
and we'll all pay in full for our own fair share.
Yeah, we're just kind of getting along because you are a state and I'm a state. You're Virginia, I'm Pennsylvania, and we're just going to go. So they are just United States. They're not the United States. And then it says it is necessary for one people to dissolve the political band. So they are breaking up. We're going to split up. The separate and equal station. All right. So like we're talking like we are here and we are separate and you are over there but you're equal. So we are all kind of on the, like, there is no
one state is not better inherently than another.
Right. And not only that, but the peoples themselves around, remember, because who's the audience here? The audience is the king. The audience is foreign nations, so they can get on our side. The audience is the people who elected these representatives that have now just put everybody at risk by signing their names to this thing. So we're all on the same page and we're all on, we're laying the groundwork. Now, I'll go here right now first so that we don't have to have the argument later. Yes, there were slaves in these colonies, and that by every measure was wrong. All right. But that was the nature of the world at the time. So fortunately, a document like this that says that we should all be under equal station puts that burr under the saddle that says, you know what you're doing ain't right. Right. And eventually it's going to take 80 years. Eventually we will get out of this mess that was the slavery there. So we're breaking up with you, but then what? We have a decent respect for your So we're going to tell you why we are splitting up. It's not you, it's me, right?
Well, in this case, it's not me, it's you.
Yeah, it was.
Sorry, Britain, we don't like how you're treating us.
But
You're out.
it's also me. We don't want to deal with this anymore. We don't want to deal with all this stuff. All right. And then comes like after that first, I guess it's pre-clause or whatever it is, we get to some of these words that we all know in our heads that have been pushed down to us through the ages. So here's the second big piece of the preamble. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience have shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when the long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Okay, now there's a word you can use in an argument. Oh, wait, you're wrong. And to prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. This is a wonderful. This is a great summary of, I guess we'll call it kind of a Lockean perspective of the nature of man in the polis, right? In a society, in a civilization. This is the philosophy for how men live together in civilization.
That's right. How men live together, as well as how they establish their government in order to justly rule them. Right? They're not saying we need some all-powerful being to rule us. Right? I mean, surely there's, respect to divine providence and inalienable rights and a creator within this preamble. But what they're really saying is that it is up to the people to establish a government that does not infringe upon these things that are inherently given to us.
Yeah, and governments are instituted among men to secure those rights. Okay, so they get the rights from the being, from their creator, and these are unalienable. Right, everybody's got them. The job of the government is to protect these, right, and the government will be built by men to do that. And you know what? If the government's not doing its job, it's got to get replaced, is what they're saying. And but it's interesting. Prudence will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Look, if it's been, I guess was that C.S. Lewis or Chesterton? I guess it's Chesterton said that before you pull up a fence, you got to figure out why it was put in there, right?
Sure.
Why is the fence there? All right. So before you rip out the government, if it's been there a long time, we ought to be careful about how we rip it out. So these guys were very careful about that sort of thing. And they were not just, they're not being willy-nilly that we're going to jump in here and shred this just because the whims of the day are moving us to do so.
I think that's right. And as you mentioned before, the previous 10 or 20 years, there's a list of grievances, right? There's the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Act, the Sugar Act, the Tea Act. All of these things keep building up over and over and over and over again. So if you're a citizen of the colonies, do you just sit and let this happen continually is
Well, he said,
the
yeah.
establishment of the government, for the past, I'll say, century. Has it done its own due diligence of governing the people justly?
Yeah, and it does say, they even say that mankind are more disposed to suffer. Okay, so it's like men are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they're accustomed. So, like, you know what? A lot of people are going to put up with stuff. They're gonna handle it until it becomes too big. All right. And how do you know it's too big, Harry? It says right here: when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right and duty to throw off such a government, provide new guards for future security. So they were like, "It is over, man. We've worked at it. We've tried. This is not going." And then after these two paragraphs, Harry, we get to this list of the facts submitted to the candid world, and
Which is, simultaneously really, really good and really funny if you just take these things, at face value, right?
well, I imagine this in committee. Okay, so I imagine this idea. They're like, okay, and then we're going to have. They're kind of laying out the structure because you're writing this with a quill pen. All right, this is not the kind of thing you do hundreds of drafts like we do now. You're not like, imagine now, Harry, if we're doing this in one of these joint editing softwares on the web. So we have that at work where, like, I can edit and you can edit from far away the same document. I'll be typing, suddenly something else will change. I'll see it because on the web it keeps it updated.
Yep.
Right. I can imagine them doing this, and some people getting really excited about what to throw in there. It was like, yeah, and he put troops in our houses. Yeah, and he took he stole my horse. And yet, you can imagine these guys like, hold on, I'm getting this down. They're trying to record all of these evils the king has thrown on them. It's a wonderful list, and some of it is very specific. Some of it's philosophical. Some of it is grand hyperbole.
That's right.
And some of it gets listed twice. This idea of the quartering of troops, I think, is in here twice. That he talks about having people armed troops in their homes, and the British would do that. They would say, "We're protecting you. This is, Sergeant Donahue, and he's going to stay in your back room. He's going to live there. You have to feed him, and you have to let him come and go as he pleases." And that was, you got to imagine that would be a thing that would drive you nuts. But that was
that's another reason why it's yet another thing in the Constitution.
Yeah. So are there any favorites you have out of this list? Because I'll tell you, folks, if you want to read this, you can read this on your own, but we're not going to read these to you because but look, he has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for public good. So that's kind of like, he's not even following the rules. All right. He's dissolved representative houses repeatedly. All right. He endeavored to prevent the population of the states. All right. Obstructing laws for naturalization of foreigners. So he's getting in the way of doing what these people want to do. He is affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He's trying to put like military law in. The people don't want that.
Oh, yeah.
Courting large bodies of armed troops.
There's transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretend offenses.
Yeah, so they drag him back to Britain to be tried, and so it just, they felt like they weren't getting their due. The one, my favorite, the one that's grand hyperbole, is he has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. I mean, that's pretty much everything, right? That's kind of that's the one I refer to as grand hyperbole.
Grand hyperbole.
I mean, yeah, and he wasn't doing. And this is where it gets difficult to understand, like, exactly how did people feel about this. Some people just wanted to live their lives. Not everybody was a patriot, right? You had patriots and you had Tories, right? Yep. And then you had people who tried to pick who would the winner going to be, and I'm going to be on that side. That's what I'm going to do. This was a very contentious time. We live in contentious times now. There are different philosophies about how people view the nature of government and what it should and should not be doing. But it's this is an interesting list. It's hard, I'm sure every one of these things, they probably went through some editing. People were like, can you really say that? What's your evidence for that? Was it really that bad? Let's think about this, because they are committing treason.
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
They are setting themselves up for treason, and the punishment for that is hanging. Right? It's a capital punishment. So
Treason punishable by death. Sure.
yeah. So they list these grievances after laying out this. It's time for us to split up. Here's our philosophy of government. These are the things the king did wrong. And I guess part of this is to defend their breakup to the rest of the world, right? We're not just doing this for our own, like we're trying to get France on board. We're trying to get Spain on board. We want everybody else out there to be on our side, right? And this is the list. These are the bad things the king's doing. So, and everybody.
Well, and
everybody
it's not only the bad things that the king is doing, but it's the bad things that the king is doing that said he wouldn't do in the first place. Right? He is breaking his own laws. Not only is he going against his people or doing bad things to him, but he is outwardly displaying a lack of his own judicial system.
Right. He's a despot and a tyrant. And he says, this is what tyranny looks like. So tyranny looks like people, there's two sets of rules, right? And you have to live under somebody else's thumb, and you're sick of it. And we're not going to take it anymore, to quote the song, right? So they list the grievances.
Yep.
And they say, this is where we are. All right. So therefore, there's three little paragraphs at the end that kind of sum up.
They sum up, this is what we have said, and this is why we are saying it.
All right. And so the summaries then.
So they say, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Okay, that is a wonderful if you want to use, I think we ought to use these words in regular conversation more often. All right. So first of all, the writing of this, our repeated petitions have only been answered by repeated injury. That parallelism in the sentence structure. If you want to study how to do good writing, there's an example of a great sentence right there. And then this example of I'm going to give you a principle here. The principle is that a prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define it. A prince who looks like a tyrant is a tyrant. All right. What do they say?
To be king.
Yeah, and he's not king, and he can't rule a free people, and we're free people, so he's out. All right, so this is, this is pretty nasty. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant. So.
Yeah, they're really calling him out.
Yeah, they're nailing him. So, all right, and then they have it. The next paragraph addresses their, we're British citizens. The people in Britain are British citizens. And now this next paragraph is pointed toward them.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They, too, have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
Yeah, so we even told our brothers in Britain that this is a problem, and they're like, yeah, whatever. We don't, you know what, you guys, we don't want to hear from you anymore. You guys are a problem. And, and I think the colonies were a problem, right? They were a problem at home, and they were there was some common commerce, right? And they had some commonality there, but at some point you're like, this isn't working. And the homeland was spending time and effort to defend the colonies, and the colonies were being kind of a problem. And you're trying to work this global thing. It was good. The same thing brought down Rome, Harry. right?
Mhm.
The distant stuff is just too hard to handle.
After hundreds of years, literally separated by an ocean, how do you expect the people of the same rule to be the same? Right? If we didn't have high-speed rail transportation and high-speed air travel, do we think that the citizens of California and Virginia would be exactly the same?
Well, see, but that's part of it. That's the whole republic of the whole large republic idea is it can't work. The founders recognize, and we're going to jump ahead a little bit here to the Constitution, but they realize it can't work when you're too distant, right? What does the person in Sarasota have to do? How can that person understand what it's like as a cattle rancher in Montana? How can you do that, right? And the answer is you don't have to do that. You got your state, I got my state, and together we have a confederation of those states, a republic of those states, a federal system of those states that allows us to deal with the interface. And then after that, it's on to you, man. So you do you. You know, it's kind of a you do you with some very, very, very broad principles that overlap. So they're saying to the British people, look, when we're at war, we're going after you. But after that, like, look, if you stop this
We can
stuff,
still be friends.
we can be buddies. And you know what? We ended up being buddies, right? Look at what happened by the time you get roll that ahead 150 years and you're in World War II, and the Brits and the Americans are getting along great. So the last paragraph is the clincher here, is the signing on the dotted line.
Right.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the supreme judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, fortunes, and our sacred honor. Signed below by all these representatives. That's a gigantic sentence. It's two sentences there at the end.
There's a couple of semicolons in there.
You talk about how the lawyers write stuff, and this is kind of how they write stuff, but it is, it's not like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy. These guys declare that they are free. We're done. We're done. In fact, it is like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy. He just said, we're done. We are free and we are no longer part of you. We're done. And it is and not only that, we are free and independent states, and we will do everything. I love this statement.
That free and independent states ought to do.
Yes. All the acts and things which independent states may have right to. That is one of my favorite lines in here, amongst along with the bit of hyperbole about ravaging our coasts, burning our towns, and destroying lives of our people. This is it. We're done. And I don't know. I got to imagine this was quite. I don't know if the Brits saw this coming, because they wrote this, right? And then some. You're one of these British guys that's there, maybe running keeping some sort of security regiment or detail there, and you hear this and you're like, yeah, George is not going to like this.
You're like, just getting up to his desk. He's like, they did what?
Well, see, yeah, they did what? And then the other thing is, and I just thought of that this morning when I was doing prep for this. I don't remember the last time. When was the time before this that a group of people just said, we are here to announce that we are now a new country? I mean, was that a thing? Could you even do that? And so this idea that they're going to create from, out of whole cloth, they're going to cut this new thing. And it's like, this is a new country. It's like, I guess they always looked at it like there's a list of countries. You got Great Britain, like, I guess,
Yeah, you've got Great Britain, Spain, Portugal, Germany, France.
Yeah,
yeah, that's about it.
but I wonder about those things. Like, did they? It's I can't get my head around, and I need to have some real good historian talk to me about this. Is like even in Britain, you got like Scotland, and you got Wales, and you got Ireland, and then they have, and you have all the idea of what is the realm and what is Britain, what's the United Kingdom, and all those other pieces, how they fit together. In France, you got Saxony, and you got Burgundy, and you got Rosé. Well, I don't know what you have all these different parts, right? And you have the Alsace-Lorraine. You have all these little chunks in Europe that kind of switch sides depending on who invaded them last, and like. But this is a new thing. This is like. It's like we're adding a new list. You're not just like switching from one group to the other. This is a stunning declaration, and there is. I'm sure if you go to the internet, you can find all sorts of descriptions of what happened to these guys who pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honors. Most of them.
I was actually reading that earlier today. If you give me,
I
don't know,
pull that up, Harry.
Pull it up for you,
and then Zach will edit some of that out. Thanks, Zach.
So, for reference.
Yeah, what happened to these guys?
So there were 56 Americans that signed.
Okay.
Of those 56, when they said, and this is a quote from, I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it's on a stone tablet, I'm assuming somewhere in the Northeast. It says, by signing the Declaration of Independence, the 56 Americans pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And it was no idle pledge. 9 signers died of wounds during the Revolutionary War. 5 were captured or imprisoned. Wives and children were killed, jailed, mistreated, or left penniless. 12 signers' houses were burned to the ground. 17 lost everything they owned. No signer defected. Their honor, like their nation, remained intact.
It is a remarkable thing what they did. I think back, like, correct me if I'm wrong here. I think in the ultimate battle of the Revolutionary War at Yorktown, right? Wasn't there one of the American generals was telling. The Americans were shelling the British strongholds, and the British were of course holed up in American homes and stuff. And this guy had to fire on his own house. It was like, that's my house. That's where they're staying. We're taking them out. Fire that cannon. I mean, can you imagine doing that? And this was in the day before. I mean, insurance wasn't then what it is now. What are you going to call Allstate and say, yeah, I fired a cannon round at my house, but I need a new one, please.
Yeah, the mayhem like me guy is running around with the Tories and the Brits.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting of this. We talked. Shoot, where is Zach's going to kill us? This is an extra bonus long episode. The like we said earlier, not everybody was a patriot, right? Right, and some of them were. The Tories were. And we talked about that with the Benedict Arnold episode, that the Tories were there and the Brits were there, and it was all, you had to pick a side. After the war, once it was successful, a lot of them ran. All right. And they were like, because you got to imagine, if you're a patriot now and you find out somebody had been supporting the other side, that's not good for you. It is interesting to me, Canada's role in this whole thing was kind of, I mean, I love my Canadian friends and I love going to Canada. It is an interesting place in that in its formation as kind of it's kind of like a respite, a place, like if Canada
it was still pro-Britain.
Right. But you know what's interesting is that if you go to the Articles of Confederation, which was and you know where I was going with this, right?
Yep.
The Articles of Confederation have it was the document that structured the national government, the Confederation government. Once the war was over, okay, now what do? They got together and they did this. Article 11 of the Articles of Confederation says, Canada acceding to this confederation and joining in the measures of the United States shall be admitted into and entitled to all of the advantages of this union, but no other colony shall be admitted into the same unless such admission be agreed to by 9 states. That's remarkable, right? I can't imagine this because there's so many of the Tories went north. I mean, and you can imagine why they did. But I guess we left a plate at the table for the Canadians to come. All right, actually,
you are welcome back. Sorry that we had our differences. And in times of war, we're enemies, but in times of peace,
friends. And that was a very valuable thing. This article in the Articles of Confederation is very valuable, or would have been very valuable, to establishing sovereignty on the continent, because Great Britain still owned that piece, all right? And because of that, they had access to the Great Lakes and then the interior of the continent and all sorts of things. But had Canada said, yeah, we would like to join, then all they had to do was like sign on the line, and it wouldn't have been 13 colonies. It would have been 14 colonies. And like, you want to write a multiverse thing, all right? Take
happens if Canada joins the U.S.?
Yeah, take that thread and see where that goes. It is a remarkable thought. Now, granted, it was never going to happen, right? I mean, you could see that it wouldn't have happened, because had there been a lot of patriots there, they might have wanted to. But once you take the Tories out of the 13 colonies and push them north, they're now going to side with, like, dude, we're going to be Brits here. We're going to be Brits. Now, of course, you throw in Quebec with the French Canadians, and it gets all sorts of wacky, and that's a topic for another day. So
sure.
Today's date. Go ahead.
You've got to tell me then. Right, as you said, today's date is July 4th, 2022. So what makes the Declaration of Independence good over 200 years later?
Why is this so valuable?
Why are we still reading it today?
It's ink on parchment. It's a time for, what did Wilson say? It's a document for a horse and buggy age. He said that, right? If there are countries around the world that have based their system of government on this document, all right, this declaration, all right, put into place. It's one of those documents in a sequence of the progression of modern Western thought. All right, so and it doesn't start with this, right? This is a step in the ladder, and you can go all the way back. Magna Carta's in that list, the Constitution's in that list, but it starts with Imago Dei, right? And it grows to this idea that you can form, like, governments are not just like, it's not like you pulled a, what do they say in Monty Python? Some tart pulling a sword out of a stone is no basis for a system of government, right? So that's
but yeah.
Oh yeah.
Women in lakes hanging out towards
okay.
Of government.
So that's not a system of government, but this is a system of government, right? The idea that the government's job is to protect the rights, right? And it establishes its authority by the consent of the governed, and when it doesn't work, you got to start over, and it's gonna. But you have to start over, but you have to build something that also protects. I mean, you can't just jump to a different kind of despotism, and it kind of lays out this idea of this of what free people living freely do, and we have all the problems that everybody knows about and all of the issues, but this as a goal, as a point to shoot toward, right? As something to aim at. This is it. This is the pinnacle, right? What else would you prefer? I guess is what I'm thinking. What do you really want? And I think, you know what a lot of people want? They really want a benevolent dictator. I think a lot of people do, right? Look, go back to, the Jews were a free people in the Bible. Go read that. And finally they said, you know what? We'd really like a king. And I forget exactly. I'll go look it up sometime. So, and whoever was in charge said, no, you don't want a king. You got, like, you are free people. You decide for yourself, work it out. So like, no, we want a king. We want a king. So God gave him a king. All right. And kings lead to problems. But this is what free government looks like. And that is the goal. That's the good.
Right. It is consent of the governed by the governed. And you're not having a benevolent dictator telling you how to live your life. You have these independent states who have representatives from the people that then voice their opinions and their concerns to a higher level. And that higher level is formed in order for the people to maintain their rights that are inalienable, endowed by their own.
Yeah, it is. And we could talk. We could spend a whole half a year on different components of this. And I understand there are pieces that are broken. I got it. Corruption. What do they say? Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. We see that all over the place, and we see it on both sides of the spectrum. It is everywhere because people are fallen. But hey, there is no place I'd rather be. There is no place I'd rather be. Certainly when I know that this is sitting in the fundament. This document here. This is where we seek to get to. All right, and we seek to live in accordance with our neighbors, and in times of war, enemies, and in peace, friends, and that's where we're going to go. Harry,
Sounds
any
like
last words?
That's it. I would think of nowhere better than to live in the good old US of A.
All right, so let's keep working to make it let's continue to aspire to these grand and noble visions. And if you fall short, then get yourself up and apologize and move on. Let's move forward. You can't unscramble eggs, as they say. Let's keep pushing. And Harry, remember to seek the good, be the good, and spread the good, and enjoy the adventure of life.